Hey, welcome everyone back to another episode of Ecosystem Aces. I'm Chip Rodgers, CMO at WorkSpan, and I am really excited to have Susan Tommy joining us today. Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Chip. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. Gosh, Susan, we've been interacting for I don't know 2 or 3 years, and I've been really excited. I think I had on the podcast your former boss, Kristen Duda, at Intellex.
Yeah,
I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. I think she was your boss. I'm not
yeah, yeah.
exactly sure. So yeah, and just watched your career and just really excited to have you on and here we'll talk about partnering.
Cool. Sounds good. Yes,
Yeah.
I think we met because of your podcast and some of the great content you put out, and it's been fun getting to know you and WorkSpan over the years.
Yeah. Thank you. Likewise. So, gosh, Susan, your career, you have a sort of interesting career path. I think you started, and by the way, coming to us from Ontario region, in Canada,
Yep.
and your career, you actually started in healthcare with, with Baxter, I think, and then in University Healthcare Network, Ontario Telemedicine, very medical field, and then made the switch to technology with Intellex and then Banana Tag and now Vena. Tell us a little bit about that career progression and what attracted you to technology and partnering.
For sure. I always, like you described, I kind of think of my career as two phases. In the first phase, I studied sciences, I did healthcare sector strategy, and that's when I went into healthcare. So I worked at pharma companies and medical device companies. Um, and like you said, University Health Network is a big hospital here in Toronto, and telemedicine. So I sort of got into the IT side of healthcare, which kind of led me to, sorry, my throat's a little scratchy, which kind of started my career path into the SaaS space. So joining some really fun and exciting Canadian scale-up companies at that exciting time when they're growing. And my career path has been I'm a self-proclaimed generalist, like a lot of partnership people. So I've been lucky that I've worked in pre-sales engineering, I've done product marketing roles, I've done product roles. So I think that's what's really attracted me to a profession in ecosystems and alliances, because it gives you a broad understanding of a lot of different functional areas. So yeah, the three companies that I spent some time in recently have all been platform companies. Intellex is a health and safety platform company. And what I was doing there was really building out their strategic alliance program, you mentioned with Kristen. So they sort of had some integrations that were born out of the product organization, but how do we build an actual partnership and a go-to-market plan with these complementary solutions? And then I joined Banana Tag, which is an internal communications company. So they're all about building really beautiful communications, disseminating them to employees and tracking the results for employee engagement. And it was really owning the end-to-end strategy for them for the ecosystem, building the program, implementing the program, finding partners. So that was really interesting and fun. And now I'm at Vena. So I manage our strategic partnerships. So I work with Microsoft here as we continue sort of our partnership journey and ecosystem strategy here.
It's really interesting that you sort of focus on being a generalist, which really is, I mean, partnering, you have to know kind of every part of the business, right? I mean, when you're partnering, you have to and sort of connect with everything from even going back to strategy, right? So strategy to product to go to market and services and kind of all of those pieces, because the partnerships
Yeah.
typically cover all of those pieces. So really, I love that that's what sort of attracted you to partnering.
Yeah, and you mentioned, some of my roles, and they've all been net new roles. So there's something about me that is attracted to kind of taking something from concept to putting some structure in it to executing. And so I feel very lucky that I've been able to do roles like that at these companies. And I think partnerships and, again, alliances align really well with that, saying, okay, let's build a partnership. What do you need to do? And then how do you make it successful?
So tell us about how, so now you're at Vena, and what's happening at Vena? What are you and your team up to? You talked about focusing on Microsoft. What's happening with you and Microsoft, with Vena and Microsoft, and kind of let's talk about all partnering as well. So
for sure. So Vena is another Canadian SaaS-based company. We're based here in Toronto. We are a planning platform. So what I mean by that, it's really any sort of planning scenario, whether it's demand planning or sales planning, that you can use our platform for. But the core use case that we see is usually around finance and operations, so financial planning and analysis. So we sell typically to finance leaders, CFOs, directors of finance. And what our software allows you to do is pull in all your core data from your source systems, whether it's your ERP, your HRIS, or your CRM data, into a centralized place. Our workflow engine allows you to easily streamline processes and collaborate with others in the organization. And lastly, analyze that information. So finance leaders, like all of us, have really had to flex and change the last couple of years, and they're really being called on their companies to be agile and react to situations that we haven't seen before. So having a tool like Vena with that flexibility to pull in all your data and react quickly is really a fun time to deliver value to these types of customers. So the Microsoft piece, how it comes in, and I was really brought in to kind of add a little bit more formalization. Our product's always been, has always leveraged Microsoft technology. So from a front end user experience, most finance professionals use Excel. So we're an Excel-based solution. So it makes it easy for collaboration and use. And we also leverage Power BI embedded in our solution. So it just makes it easier, again, for getting more to that prescriptive and predictive analytics that you want to do, again, as you're forecasting and planning across your organization. And then lastly, we're building connectors within the Dynamics product lines, Business Central and Finance. ERP data is usually the first set of data that a finance professional will need to pull in for this type of planning. So that's the role with Microsoft. Overall, Vena has a really growing and successful partner program. We work with a lot of service partners and a lot of solution partners currently, but as I said, we're kind of reacting like everyone else to this changing landscape and looking at how we can grow our ecosystem and partner with new and other interesting companies.
Yeah, it's interesting with the connecting into Excel and with Microsoft having a lot of those sort of technologies, Power BI and Dynamics, right? So I suspect that Vena is connecting into all of those, sort of bringing all those together into a presentation layer for your customers, and everything is presented through Excel. So there are sounds like a lot of integrations that have to take place.
Yeah, I mean, you can't not talk about all the innovation that's coming out of Microsoft, and it's always changing, but there are a lot of alignments on how we think about, like I said, building collaboration and integrating across all these different product lines. And really, at the end of the day, it's to improve working and productivity and make people happier at work, really.
Yeah. So you're focused mostly on Microsoft, and tell us a little bit about that partnership and the relationship. Are you what aspects of that relationship are you personally involved with in helping to grow? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so if you look at Microsoft's sort of three pillars, the build with, co-market with, and sell with, I sort of own that end-to-end relationship. So I work closely with um, Microsoft out of Microsoft Canada, understanding, like I said, the technologies and things we want to do as we build more within their modern work or office productivity suite. And as we look at, they were talking about Copilot the other day and how there's more integration between the Dynamics or business applications, cloud business, and modern work, and looking at how we can align and how we can, support customers. A lot of our customers are Microsoft users. So how do they get the most out of their investment by using a solution that, like Vena, that's very Microsoft centric? Yeah. So my role is really from the product and understanding the integrations that we want to build and how we align to Microsoft goals and strategies, as well as the commercial execution.
So you mentioned Copilot. So some AI capabilities are those the things that you're working on at Vena with Microsoft, and how does that sort of come out as to the end user?
Yeah, so we use Power BI embedded right now, and that's our data visualization platform. And we're starting to look at how we can leverage ML in our solution to help, like I was saying, finance professionals on their transformation journey as it goes from sort of that reactive back office to, like I said, this need for being agile and flexible in today's market to getting to that predictive stage. So it's really exciting to see, like I said, how we can help support finance leaders with technology and innovation.
Yeah. How do you sort of think of, or how does Vena think of that process of working with partners and sort of deciding which partners to work with? Where are the market opportunities? How do you sort of figure out your white space versus their white space, and how the sort of map of how you want to work together, and then kind of take us through that journey of sort of deciding where there might be opportunities with partners, and then kind of going through that process of building something and bringing it to market?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, the sort of approach that we're using is making sure, like you're saying, we're targeting and aligning with the right types of partners, not to partner for partner's sake. So one of the first things I always do when I join an organization or when I'm working on a strategic partnership is really have a good look at your current state. What are you doing today? And an honest conversation. And I interview, we talked about generalists and working cross-functionally. So really looking at it from all areas of the business, whether it's your commercial teams, your sales, customer success teams, product, et cetera. Like, where are you today as a company? I mentioned a lot of my experience has been in these high growth companies, so it can change very rapidly. But where are you today? And like I said, doing that current state analysis. And from that, it's really like your vision and your future state. So of course, partnerships and ecosystem strategies, it has to align with the corporate objectives. Like, what are you trying to go, or what are you trying to do? And I think it's always, you need to ground it in what's the value you're creating for your customer? Like, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Like I said, in our case, we're trying to help finance professionals plan for anything in these uncertain times and plan to grow their business. So that's really core what we try to focus on with Vena. So that's the second thing, sort of, your current state, your future state, where you're going. And then I like to look at our product roadmap. I mentioned, my background is in alliances. So really that classic build buy partner scenario, saying again, here's what we're planning, here's where we want to focus, or here's where we differentiate. And it helps to identify those gaps that could be filled with a partner. So I think that's really important to look at your roadmap and work very collaboratively with your product organization to see how can we accelerate growth, or how can we leverage technology like big investments by Microsoft to accelerate our growth. So that's sort of the third thing that I think is really important, is looking at your product capabilities and your product roadmap. And that could span, I mentioned, at Vena, we focus on finance. So the overall office of finance, we work with other ISVs like Fluence, who specialize in close management, for example. So again, is it easier to partner than trying to build this solution yourself? And I think that really leads to the fourth step of trying to figure out, okay, here's our ecosystem. Here's what we're trying to do. And looking at it from, again, that customer lens of who's already talking to our customer, who's already in their space. And I think that's always important as a way to kind of connect these dots. And then, like I said, the last step is, recruiting or starting to develop these relationships with different partners. But for me, kind of walking through in that internal analysis makes it really clear of, this is what we're trying to do, and this is the value we're creating for our customers, and here's how we think we can work together when you're approaching partners.
So you're working again, going back to the generalist. Again, you're talking to the product teams. You're talking to sales to understand what's happening with customers, where customers are already using something. Is that a sort of natural feedback that happens? Do you sort of do outreach to sales and to customers to understand some of those potential partnering opportunities, or how does that work with Vena?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned we're evolving as Vena's about a 12-year-old company, and our ecosystem strategy is kind of growing. And I think, from my experience, alignment at the ELT level is really critical. So we're really lucky here that our CEO and our ELT members understand the importance of partnering and partnerships and ecosystems. So, and we have lots of different ways. For me personally, again, as a partner person, I like to talk. So I like to meet. It's harder now that we're all virtual, but making those connections, whether it's at a working group level or an executive level, but making sure that people understand, like I said, I call them foundations, but getting back to the basics of, why are we doing this? How is this creating value for our customers? And I think when you talk about generalists and going to different people, your messaging is going to change depending on the functional area. So for example, if you're working with sales executives, this is how this is going to, partnering with Microsoft, this is how it's going to increase your conversion. This is how it's going to give you more access to other stakeholders in the account to build your reputation as a trusted advisor. So, so the importance of the overall partnership, but then tailoring your message with it internally within the organization is really important.
Yeah. Interesting. You're going to help retire quota.
Well, at the end of the day, that's the goal. But yeah, like I said, making it relevant to who you're speaking to.
Yeah. Gosh. So, we talked about some, at a higher level, technology partners and working together. We've touched on a little bit about, integrations, but that world has changed so dramatically with the innovation that's constantly coming out around API technologies. So how has that affected the work that Vena is doing?
Yeah, so we do have a product team that's responsible for all our integrations. But I would say, even in my career, in less than 10 years, it's changed, like you said, so dramatically. So it was sort of, I would say, almost like a nice to have, another way to integrate your data, to
Hmm.
it's very imperative and almost key. And what I've seen is it's coming from the customers. I mentioned a lot of the companies I work are platform solutions that are highly configurable. So back in the day, it was like, oh, I got to go to IT to get them to fix my software solution. But now it's being democratized across organizations where business users are interested in wanting to understand how APIs work. So I think that shift has made it really important for companies to have an API strategy, both for their customers, and then partners are expecting that too. So, like I said, Vena has invested and continues to invest in sort of our API strategy. But it's really
Yeah.
interesting. I think, again, it's being driven by the customer.
And so it makes those partnerships, the opportunity to do partnerships with, certainly with other ISVs, easier and sort of more flexible based on customer demand.
Yeah, I was talking about the product roadmap, and when you're sitting down and thinking of the use cases and what you're trying to accomplish, I think having, you know, different tools in your toolkit, so to speak, of how you can integrate the solutions, really helps to kind of come up with creative solutions and bring
Hmm.
product teams together in alignment again on innovative ways of doing things.
Yeah. So how about services partners? We've been talking a lot about technology partners, solution, other ISVs. How do service partners play into what Vena is delivering to customers?
Yeah, so I mentioned we work with a lot of service partners that specialize in our space. It's sometimes called CPM or corporate performance management and FP&A. And I also mentioned ERP and other source systems as being sort of keystone ecosystems that we want to play in. So the same approach, looking at, as I was talking about technology partners, bringing on the right targeted partners we want to work with. We're looking at service partners the same way. We're looking at vertical solutions. So we are sort of a breadth of platform with finance solution, but looking at industry specific use cases and how do we find dynamics partners, for example, that
Hmm.
specialize in manufacturing, as an example, who can align and drive value for our customers with that industry expertise, which, as you know, is also a strategy that Microsoft is doing, looking at how they're getting deeper in their industries. So I think a similar approach is looking at, what's our ideal partner that we want to work with. And that same approach of coming together with, here's our value, here's their value, and how can we work together?
Yeah, I think it's really true that that service partners, well, a lot of times just have the very deep experience in the use cases and industry expertise that can help. So if you got service partners that are in the finance industry, then they could, they'll bring a lot of value to the table for Vena.
Yeah, and I think it's also, where you are like I mentioned, where your customer is at. Are you the lead or the attach in that situation? So sometimes, like I mentioned, an ERP vendor, we might be the attach, the value add to their ERP implementation. So really,
Yeah.
like I said, looking at it holistically from what is the customer trying to do, and how can we help our service partners as well, with the service work they're trying to do or solve the problem. I've mentioned a couple times it's about centralizing the data. How can a tool like Vena help them address their customer challenges?
Yeah. Uh, so Susan, how do you, when you're working with partners, how do you, one of the challenges is just, you got your organization, Vena has, the company goals and your, personal goals as a partner leader, and your partners have their own goals and priorities and culture and things like that. So how do you keep things aligned? What have you found? I think that's one of the big challenges with partnering.
Yeah, of course. I think we've talked a lot about cross-functional work and cross-functional alignment from all levels of the organization, and doing that stakeholder alignment and matching with your partner that you're trying to work with, especially large
Hmm.
hyperscalers like Microsoft, understanding who do you talk to and how do you build those relationships with a large partner like Microsoft. And I think I read somewhere, I heard something recently on a podcast or something like it. It's not real unless it's written down. So getting back to that joint business plan, and it really drives that accountability. And
Hmm.
we talked about joint value. What are we both trying to do, and how are we measuring that? So you talked about we're all here to close quota. Yeah, but so tracking those metrics. And I think once you have those tools in place, the stakeholder alignment, the documented plan, the metrics that you're
Hmm.
trying to drive, it
Hmm.
it helps with the communication and having those honest conversations with your partner counterpart about, okay, this is working, this isn't working, what do we need to adjust? So having it something to reference versus just kind of um, not not having something to base it on, I guess, of
Yeah.
where the partnership is breaking down, or where you may encounter issues in a partnership.
Yeah. Like setting expectations between both organizations.
Yeah, and like I said, that communication, that constant communication, and building that trust, and like I
Hmm.
said, being able to say, this is working, this isn't working, went really well. How can we do more of this? And just that iterative um, approach to how you can partner and how you can build a better working relationship.
Yeah. Susan, this has been fantastic. Maybe one last question. You've had a terrific and successful career in partnering. Any things that you picked up along the way that you would want to share with our audience on just things that have worked for you, some advice that you got along the way, maybe something that Kristen shared with you, but what's worked for you, and what would you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think I do feel very lucky that I've had a chance to meet a lot of great leaders and
Yeah.
partnership experts like yourself and others over the years. I think for me personally, I try to embody a growth mindset, and what that means for me is
Hmm.
um, actively listening. Like I was saying, the good and the bad that you get from feedback cross functionally, internally and externally, and really just being curious and trying to understand. We know partnerships and ecosystems has gone through this rapid growth in the last couple of years. So, you know, you're not going to know all the answers, and trying to connect with people who can help. So I would say that's the second tip, or thing that I really try to do is make time to connect. I try to put in an hour of time in my calendar to listen to a podcast, to rewatch a pre-recorded webinar, and reach out to people and connect with people. In my experience, there's a lot of people who are willing to help. I think partnership people by nature want to help others. So just trying to build your network, and then lastly, pay it forward. I think I'm like I said, I'm very grateful for a lot of leaders who have shared the time with me, and I try to do the same when I can.
Gosh, it's great advice, and there are so many opportunities. I think there's such an active, I think partnerships and partnering has really just exploded, recently. And I mean, there's always been partnering out there, but there's just a sort of a groundswell these days, and a lot of great opportunities to connect through communities like partnership leaders, and just everything. The activity that's happening on LinkedIn is pretty amazing. Just sort of following some folks that are. our thought leaders and helping
Yeah.
helping others. So including you, Susan.
Yeah, I
You've been
agree.
sharing some great content.
Yeah, no, I agree. Partnership leaders, Catalyst, SaaS Connect. There's lots of great ways, and like I said, if you aren't able to attend, there's lots of virtual events and great podcasts like Ecosystem Aces, Ultimate Guide to Partnerships. I think, and like I said, reach out.
Yeah,
I'm always grateful when people give me time, and I find if you just say thank you, people are willing to chat with you a little bit more if there's something that really intrigued you about what they were talking about.
yeah. A couple of great shout outs, Susan. SaaS Connect is coming up in April, I think,
Yes.
like April 19th, somewhere mid-April. And then Catalyst in Denver in mid-August. And so a lot of great opportunities to connect with partner people and learn. So great advice.
Thank you, Chip. I'm so glad we had a chance to do this. Thank you again for having me on your show.
Yeah, likewise. And this has been fantastic, Susan. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your experiences. And this has been fantastic. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chip. And happy St. Patrick's Day again.
That's right. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. And gosh, for Susan, Tommy, I'm Chip Rodgers. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of Ecosystem Aces, and we'll see you next time. I think we've got one scheduled next week. So see you next week, and thank you again, Susan.
Thank you.